So let me talk to you about a few case studies. Before I get into that, any other questions? It's one? Yeah. Any other questions? No? Okay. So one of the programs that we ran was for Novell. And I realized some of these are larger. I have some smaller ones. So Novell was the company that had the NetWare routing system. They had a distributor problem in that they had a bunch of NetWare component pieces, the software that they needed to push into the distributor marketplace because they had a new version coming out. And it wasn't moving that well. So we put together a program that said, okay, how are we going to get this out through and get the distributors to buy it and then have the distributors push it out to the marketplace. And the way that we went about doing this was we took 130,000 records. The data, very important, the data. Where did I get that data from? Computer intelligence. We knew we had 130,000 companies that had certain number of PC network nodes inside their organization, and we knew we were talking to the guy who made the buying decision. Okay? What did we do? We sent out a mailing package to that person, and we asked them to give us some insight back about their buying situation, about the networks they were running, and so we gained some insight from them. It was a simple survey. And what did we ask them for? We asked them for a bunch of information, everything pertaining to NetWare, and everything pertaining to how they would use NetWare. And what did we offer them? The offer was a Swiss Army knife. I kid you not, it was a Swiss Army knife made in China. Okay? We got a 35% response on that. We had people calling, and one guy said, look, I'm a Boy Scout Cub Master, this thing's great, can you send me half a dozen more knives? And the guy at NetWare said, you know, that's crazy, why are we sending, like, the knives that cost you $3 a piece, that's 15 bucks, think of the goodwill that you're going to build here. We cleared out everything from the shelves of NetWare version 6 so that they could bring version 7 in. Okay? That basically, in addition to that, all those leads that we captured, we had a pipeline now that we could give to the distributors for NetWare 7 and future ones for 8 months after that. You know, I recognize big company, I recognize that, but the methodology I've talked about, very valuable and very relevant here. So here's another one. Connecticut was a company that we dealt with their brokers. Connecticut is an insurance provider up in Connecticut, only in Connecticut, not a big national company. And they had a problem in that Oxford and some of the larger nationals were coming into their market. And they looked at, Connecticut, looked at what their rate increase was going to be for health insurance that year, and they realized that other people coming into the market were going to be lower than they were going to be. And they said, we have two problems. First, we have a problem with the end user, the consumer. But our bigger problem, quite frankly, is the broker, because we don't own the relationships with the brokers. The brokers are independents. They're going to carry all these other insurance brands with them. And when they sit down with somebody, if they hear that our price point's too high, how are we going to counteract that? So what we did was we came out with a plan to counteract this fact that they were going to be about 5% higher than everybody else on an 8% increase in their insurance. And the way that we went about doing that was we sent out a 3D pack, a three-dimensional box to each of their salespeople, the brokers. I think there was about 180 of them. And we put a pen in there with the broker's name on it. And we basically presented it to them saying, listen, if this pen is for writing new business. And if you keep the business that you have with Connecticut, you're going to get an extra 1.5% commission. If you build it by 15%, you're going to get 2%. If you build it by 30%, you're going to build it by 2.5%. Keep in mind, this was during the time you were allowed to do that. This is about 7 or 8 years ago. They had, effectively, what we did is we kept that book of business, and we grew it with an 8% challenge in the overall cost of what the insurance was going to be. Now, it's not like they were just aggressive salespeople, right? They must have had a way to convince folks that, okay, our price is higher, but it's better because of A, B, and C. So we did a lot of education to the broker in the community, the broker community, to make sure that they knew how to convey that messaging. So I mentioned to you about a referral program. Here's a referral program. We ran this for ADP. You can take this and run this type of thing, believe it or not, in your own organization. It doesn't necessarily have to be as widespread and as large as this one. But what we did was we went out to the ADP PEO, Preferred Employment Organization. What they did is for companies with 30 or more employees, they basically took over your HR. and they took over your HR and they offered you $75,000 worth of guaranteed legal support if you were ever sued by an employee. And they did that by taking ownership of your employees. So in my case, my employees became IMG/ADP Total Source employees. And what was important for us to try and do was to figure out, okay, how do we find other companies who are out there who would fit this mold? Because it's not like they need just to have 30 employees, right? At 30 was good, at 75 it was too high, so we needed that. But we also needed to make sure that the ownership of the company, the management, was in line with that line of thinking. What we did was we put together a program where we went out to brokers and we went out to CPAs and we said, if you give us the name of people within your portfolio who might fit the bill for this, we're going to give you a wireless mouse. And if those people turn into business for ADP's Total Source within 60 days, I think it was 60 days, we're going to give you 6 months. We're going to give you a laptop, a wireless laptop. The ROI on that program, even with those two giveaways, was 400 to 1. And we effectively conveyed that information not through big, expensive things, but with phone calling and with personalized letters. Matter of fact, we use a personalized letter inside a post office priority envelope. I think just based on the time, I may skip through this. D&B was a similar situation, another 3D package. I'm happy to go into more detail about that. Here's a good one, Avaya Co-op. We ran a co-op program for Avaya, another big company, but this was for small businesses, their distributors and their business partners driving the decision making and driving the sale of Avaya components. This was phone systems and such. Basically, they had a problem in that they were losing distributors that were going off to Nortel and others. So we put together a program, again, to that audience of buyers, the actual business partners, and we put together a thing called the Market Leaders Program. And what it was just an opportunity for them, the local Avaya business partner, to have access to marketing component material that Avaya put together. And all it was doing, that Avaya marketing material, was just talking about Avaya componentry, Avaya phones, and Avaya's messaging. And just by having that information, it was enough to sustain that growth and to sustain the pull to Nortel and actually grow that base. Just by having that marketing information, okay? And the last one is basically my company. When I started, when I bought my last partner out in 1996, I was doing about $3 million in sales. I was the only salesperson that we had. I grew the company from 96 to 2001. I quadrupled the size. I took it to $12 million. I did that. We're a marketing company. We didn't do any real marketing. The real things that we did were, we had an IMG Matters newsletter, just a simple newsletter, a lot of chest stumping, things that we had done, new technologies we brought into the business. We sent it out to all our existing customers. It's much easier to cross-sell your service to existing customers. If you have something else, it's much easier to cross-sell in than trying to find new customers. We had press releases, very relevant detail, all of them, but we had something going out every 6 weeks. And so when I saw customers, they were saying, wow, you're expanding. What's going on? How's that going for you? I see you've got this new thing. I see you've got that new thing. I see you have this new service. And it allowed us basically to catapult into their memory banks and make sure that they were constantly aware of what we were doing, right? You can't pay for that kind of space in someone's mind. We had open house twice, okay? Once when we did something like this, when we renovated the building, and then I did it again in 2001. And what I found to be the most effective thing I ever did was every year I would have a client appreciation night. And it got to the point where I was having that at the Meadowlands racetrack in New Jersey, and we would actually rent out a section of the racetrack. They'd put up tents, and I'd have all my clients come. And it cost me hamburgers and hot dogs and beer and wine. They did all their own bedding, and we made sure there were separate bathrooms and bedding windows. And I mean, people look forward to that every year. And it doesn't cost much. And I let them bring other people with them, right? And then I had the salespeople, the game plan, I had the salespeople all ready, you know, talk to them, make sure who's going to cover who with what. Everybody has to make sure that they leave here feeling, you know, we're all on our game. Okay? So, the last slide I have for you, and then I'll take all questions. What's the most important thing? Data. You have to have that data, right? You can't sell something to somebody if they're not interested in it or they can't use it. That's the most important thing for lead generation. Make sure you get the proper data. The buying window, I've mentioned that half a dozen times. That buying window is real. It exists. When you get responses back from somebody, even if you get a response back from them, they may not be interested right now. Doesn't mean they're not interested or have a need for you 2 months down the line. If I'm selling tires, they may not need tires right now, but if I talk to them, they may need tires 2 months from now. Knowing that information, cataloging that, having that in a way that I can access that quickly is very meaningful, very valuable, and will continue to drive down your ROI. The plan, that's key. And everything that I've talked about, what had to be available and had to be put together is a plan. There had to be a systematic way of going about looking at things and how I was going to drive, or how the company was going to drive a certain sequence of events. And the better prepared you are for that, the better the likelihood that you're going to have a higher level of success.